Hi and welcome to One Patriots Place Live, brought to you by e2gsports.com. And if you're listening on podcast, thank you for downloading. Please do not forget to rate, review and subscribe. Your hosts today, Steve Balistreri. It is the return of Thomas Murphy, myself, Claire Cooper, and we are very pleased to be joined by the guy whose cats are more popular than he is on Twitter, the glorious, the super smart, the multi-sports talented. It is Mark Schofield. Mark, welcome back to the show. How are things with you?
Claire, it's funny you brought up the cats because we could start with a quick cat-related story. So it was the other night. Everybody else in the house is asleep, but the two cats and myself. I'm watching. I was actually rewatching Scrubs because, as
Nice.
people know,
as you do
on Twitter, I am a huge fan of that show. And I saw that the two cats, Rosie and Sunny, were batting around a piece of string, and I kept pulling it away from them. And then I went to sip the beer that I was drinking, and I heard that snarfing sound. And I looked down, and Sunny has the very tip of the string coming out of her mouth. And so I spent the next 20 minutes chasing her around, and again, midnight, and I realized that she swallowed it. So I have to do the most terrifying thing that I've done in a long time, which is wake up the wife.
Oh,
The cat just swallowed a piece of string.
oh.
And 12 hours later and a hefty chunk of change later, they were able to go in and get that string removed. But the fun was not done. Because those of you who are listening, or perhaps
What else did they find?
Well, they also found a couple of hairballs, a couple of ripped up scouted notes and Post-its in there, a whole bunch of stuff when they scoped out her stomach. But the fun did not end there, because when we brought Sunny home, Rosie did not recognize her because she smelled different. She was shaved. The belly was shaved.
Yeah.
And so now it's been an entire weekend of trying to reintroduce them to each other. And what makes it even better is come Friday morning, we're piling the kids and the family into the van and headed north to lovely Boston, Massachusetts. First trip back to see the family in a long time. So excited about that.
There you go.
But who knows if we'll come back to two cats and still recognize each other when we return. So,
all right, here's a tip. Here's a tip. If it still isn't working, Mark, and she still doesn't recognize her, lock them in the bathroom. First, take out all the little throw rugs, all right, and slather the cat in tuna oil. Just take 1 can of tuna, put the oil all over. She's going to be licking her for the next 3 to 8 hours, and life will be perfect.
That's Murph. That's literally our plan for like Wednesday night, like before we're getting ready to leave. It's like, all right, we're just gonna slather them in tuna and salmon juice and just let them go nuts. They'll figure it out. Yeah.
They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. I'm back, folks. Yes, I knocked down the front door. That my keys still did not fit. Okay, Claire changed the locks, and I was not here last week. Okay, she didn't want, so I had to freaking go full Hulkster and just smash down the door so I could get back here and be with Mark. Claire wanted the show to herself last week. It was a fantastic show. I thought about not coming back this week. That's how good it was. But Mark was here, and so I had to be here. Marky, thank you so much for making the time.
Of course.
We always appreciate it. We always appreciate it. So since I was absent last week without AOL, I'm going to jump into this one. Mark, who do you feel right now in this underrated draft class that Bill has put together that everybody else is calling underrated? No one here. Who stands out to you to make the biggest impact out of these rookies not named Cole Strange?
Yeah, I mean, because you're right. I'm glad you put that qualifier in, because Strange is the obvious choice because it looks like he's going to slot into a starting role in the offensive line, and that makes him the obvious choice. But I think Tyquan Thornton is the next sort of name on that list. When you think about what this passing game was missing last year, explosive plays in the downfield passing game. Like that's what this offense was really missing. And they tried to manufacture some of those. They tried to generate some of those with shot plays, play action, flea flickers, like whatever they could do to generate those explosive plays downfield. Because my colleague over at Touchdown Wire, Doug Farrar, he tells me all the time, and we go back and forth on it, but he thinks that the name of the game in the NFL today, explosive plays. Can you generate them on offense? Can you prevent them on defense? If you can do those two things, you're going to be a good football team. The Patriots at times could prevent the explosive plays on the defensive side of the ball. They couldn't really manufacture them, at least in the passing game on the offensive side of the ball. His speed, his ability to get downfield, his ability to separate from coverage, his ability to run away from man coverage defenders, just pure speed, is an opportunity to generate some of those explosive plays. And yes, it gets us back to, can Mac Jones then deliver on his end, which I think all four of us would agree he can when given the opportunity. And now having it, a full off-season program, and he looks great, and he's cut out the ice cream and all that. Thornton's ability to offer that explosive playmaking potential downfield could be huge for this offense.
All right. I wrote this week, actually, after talking a bit with a colleague that I will not name drop here, that week to week, Thornton might end up being a healthy scratch on Sunday with the talent that this team already has at wide receiver. He's going to need to be more than a one-trick pony. I'm going to drag this coverage down the field, occasionally get an explosive play, and open up things for everybody else. How far off base do you think I am?
I mean, given what we have seen from Bill Belichick over the past 20 years or so, I don't think that's an outlandish thought at all. I mean, I remember a couple of Super Bowls ago when it was like, oh yeah, they're going to use this guy, and I'm blanking on the receiver, the speedy guy that it was, but I'm like, I remember they're going to use him to just take the top off the defense and open up things underneath. And he was a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. It was the second Giants loss, and I'm just blanking on the receiver. But we've seen them do that in the past. And so there's a potential where they might go into a week, like say you're playing the Buffalo Bills, right?
Right.
You're going to play them twice next year. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, perhaps, if not the best safety tandem in the league, they're one of the top 2 or 3. You're probably not going to beat them over the top, regardless of who the receiver is, regardless of how fast they are. You might have a different game plan. You might have a more tight end heavy, Highclere game plan for that week. And so you might have more tight ends active that week. You might have a third or fourth tight end active where you don't need his speed. You aren't going to want that for that week. And so, there might be weeks where Belichick goes in and whoever the offensive play caller is goes in and says, we don't need that this week. There might be other weeks when you're going to want that. So I don't think it's an outlandish idea at all that even though they drafted him in the second round and we're hoping that he can create explosive plays, that there might be weeks where he's just watching the game like the rest of us are.
During OTAs, they actually had him. That's it. Michael Floyd. Bravo. Yeah. During OTAs, they actually had Thornton out there working as a gunner.
Yeah.
You have to be versatile. You have to be able to contribute in more than one area. And if he's not being able to do that, and Bill needs another position player, it's a distinct possibility. I don't think it's etched in stone, but it's a distinct possibility. I'm sorry, Claire, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Mark, there's so much being talked about, some by me, the offensive line, and it's kind of like shuffle or the potential for the shuffle the beginning of the season. Not many people are really talking about Drew Desjardins. Now, do you have any opinions on him as of yet? And do you believe that he'll only maybe get a look due to injury, or do you kind of feel like maybe he's a chance of a starter?
I mean, I think he'll probably get a look during camp in terms of the depth that he could offer on the interior. I think, look, the idea is you're going to have Strange, you're going to have Owenu, you're going to have Andrews. Like, those are going to be your 3 guys on the interior. Now, at the same time, we know that the NFL season is sometimes a war of attrition. Like, you have to have depth all over your roster, particularly on the offensive line. When you're talking about, a second-year quarterback under a new offensive play caller, you want to make sure you have your best 5 up front to start, but you have to have options behind them. And I think he's going to get an extensive look during training camp as could he be the next man up? Because let's face it, you get past this top 5, the guys were expected to be their starting 5, there are question marks. And so who can step in, who can be that third guard, that swing guard is going to be a critical thing to figure out during training camp. And I think they're going to give him an extensive look to figure out, can he be that guy? If, Owenu goes down, if Strange doesn't pan out, I mean, he's a rookie. We might be asking a lot for him. Yep. He might not pan out the way we hope he will. He might have some struggles here and there. Who can be that next man up in the interior with those 2 guard spots? He's going to get an extensive look to figure out if he can be that guy.
Considering the sort of depth, as you mentioned, and it is important, do you think there's sort of any chance that they're going to move on from Wynn, sorry. Do you think that that's like it's a done deal? He's going to stay, or do you see maybe Isaiah Wynn being moved mainly for a cap issue?
I would be surprised if they
Right.
move him. I mean, I'm actually watching him today for a project that I'm working on, and I remain very impressed by his skill set. And I know there have been some injury issues, and I know that that's sort of a question mark or lingering question mark with him. And I know there's an idea right now that you're going to move, Brown to left tackle and slide him down to right tackle and sort of shuffle the guys around. The days of you need a premier left tackle and that's it are over. Like, so many defenses now are moving guys around. You need two left tackles in today's NFL. Just one of them has to line on the right side, because you're going to see guys like Khalil Mack coming off that edge. You're going to see guys like Von Miller coming off that edge. Two guys now that you're going to see a lot next season. And so I think you need two left tackle type of players, just one now playing on the right side. And I expect Wynn to fill that role for this team. I think he's a very fluid mover. I think he handles things well, both in the zone blocking scheme and the gap blocking scheme that the Patriots rely upon. I think his hand placement as a pass protector is very good. I think he can handle speed rushers pretty well. He can handle power rushers pretty well. And so I think because of the need at that position, because of the need to tackle generally, it's hard to then look and say, well, there are cap concerns, so we're going to move on from him and slide in Justin Herron. We're going to slide in Durant. I think you have to have two premier type tackles in this league right now. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
But can't you argue that they did that for Shaq Mason? Which is like why it was on my mind kind of thing. Can't you argue that that's exactly what they did with Shaq Mason? He's moved on from such an elite defensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the difference is the amount of interior pass rushers that you face in the NFL is not as high as the amount of exterior edge rushers you're going to see. And while Mason was an elite talent on the interior offensive line, the Aaron Donalds of the world are few and far between.
Right.
But the guys on the edge, like even mid-tier edge type players, are going to pose problems if you have weaknesses at the tackle spot. And so you need to place an emphasis from a roster construction standpoint on the edges as opposed to the interior. It's not to say that guards don't matter. They certainly do. They certainly do. But the mid-tier pass rushers off the edge, they're still going to pose problems if you have just mid-tier offensive tackle talent. Whereas the guys that really pose problems for pass rushers, for offensive lines on the inside, they're rarer to find. And so you need to sink those resources. It's easier to move on from elite talent on the inside. Joe Thuney, another example, that it is to move on, elite tackle talent in today's NFL.
That was Kansas City putting the cart before the horse and thinking that they were going to end up facing the Rams in the Super Bowl. And they saw what he did 2 years earlier against them. I'm sorry, Steve. I just wanted to throw that out.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Mark, it wouldn't be a show with us unless we talk some quarterbacks. And actually, this is more of an NFL question, not really a Patriots question at all. But, I mean, Deshaun Watson's saga continues. He's meeting with people today. We're going to find out. It seems like the NFL is going for at least a year.
Yep.
So, what does this mean, in your opinion, long term for Cleveland? And do they try to mend some fences with Baker Mayfield, or do they go with Jacoby Brissett?
Obviously, we're recording this on Tuesday. Watson's hearing is starting today before Sue Robinson, a retired district court judge from the District of Delaware. It's expected to last 2 days. Like you said, the NFL, Steve, is pushing for what they're terming an indefinite suspension of least, more than a year. That's what they're seeking. The NFLPA is going to push back on that. That's their job, to sort of represent the player's interest, regardless of what you might think about their position. Sometimes, look, and I say this as a former lawyer, you have to represent some things that you might not agree with personally, but that's your job. So that's going to play it over the next 2 days. I think the relationship with Baker Mayfield is fractured beyond repair. I mean, as much as Cleveland might say, hey, we still got our starting quarterback from last year. I would be stunned if Mayfield plays it down for the Cleveland Browns again. I think it's far more likely Mayfield's in Carolina or Seattle sometime before training camp starts. Now, the question becomes, are they comfortable rolling with Jacoby Brissett? And I think that's why the Browns want to find out in the next week or so what the suspension is going to be. Because let's say, hypothetically, Watson's suspension is like 4 games. I think that is outlandish. I don't think that's what we're going to see. But if hypothetically it's a 4-game suspension, somehow they'll just roll the Brissett for 4 games. Because if you look at their schedule, it's like those first 4 games. Like they're not really tested those first 4 games. I think they get the Jets, they get Atlanta. Like it's an easy schedule out of the gate. Anything longer than that, they're going to have to think about bringing somebody else in. Because that second 4-game stretch, they are really tested. I think they get Tampa Bay, they get some other teams in there that are playoff teams. That would be the stretch where I think you're going to need somebody beyond Jacoby Brissett. Now, who could that be? Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, the number of available options are starting to dwindle, which is why the Browns, from an organizational standpoint, they want to get a resolution on this sooner rather than later. I think the Browns are going to have to make a move, because I do anticipate that you're going to see him gone for at least 1 season. Maybe it's something like 12 games. Maybe it's a season and it gets appealed down and Goodell tries to sort of split the baby and says, okay, 12 games. They're going to have to make a move at that point. And so, I don't think they can roll with Jacoby Brissett. I don't think that will be enough in what we expect to be a tough division and what we expect to be a tough conference. And they have a tough schedule, particularly in that sort of October, November range. So they'll have to make a move, and it might be Jimmy Garoppolo, which, again,
they don't have the chips.
They're in trouble. Like
they don't have the chips. They don't have the chips to bring Jimmy in.
Now have to make another move. Now I think what they would try to do with a Mayfield move would be to unload some of his contract to free up enough space. But then it becomes, if you're Carolina, if you're Seattle, are you really going to take on some contract money of Baker Mayfield to bail the Browns out? No, you're going to hold your feet to the fire on it. So Cleveland's in a really bad spot, and this is pretty much all of their own doing. They say they did the due diligence. Did they?
No,
no,
absolutely not.
Well,
but my other follow-up to this was with Jimmy Garoppolo, because I was surprised hearing Martellus Bennett say what he did about Jimmy G, and then Julian Edelman backed him up on that.
Yeah. I mean, I know 49ers fans and analysts kind of pushed back and said, look, he played hurt last year. And maybe, there's something to that, but it doesn't change what happened in the years prior. It doesn't change what happened during his time in New England. And for Edelman, it's just sort of like you said, Steve, back him up on that, back Bennett up on that, I think speaks volumes. Which gets us to, again, similar to Baker, if you're Carolina, if you're Cleveland, if you're Seattle, how much are you giving up for Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, exactly what he is as a quarterback. You know his strengths, you know his weaknesses. What are you really giving up for Jimmy Garoppolo at this point?
True. I mean, but I'm still a Jimmy G fan. Giardi and I still text back and forth about, what could have been, what should have been, and things of that nature. I go back to that instance, and I think, he was coming up on a free agent season. One more hit could have really done some damage. And sometimes some people just handle pain better than others. It's not like Jimmy has been out there saying, I tweaked my baby toe. The man was out there with a torn ACL. He missed time that way. He's out there. He's under contract. He's played while he's been hurt. At that point in time, he had no security. He had no contract. I applaud him for going out there and getting paid, but I applaud Brissett even more for going out there and playing a game without a thumb. That was just fantastic. So I know, but getting back to your point, what would you give up for Jimmy G? It depends on my offense and basically whether or not he's going to come in at a contract that's at a reasonable rate for an extension before I decide what I'm going to give up for him. I wouldn't have a problem giving up a 2nd-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo if I was, somebody. Yeah, I really wouldn't. If I was in need, I'd do it. If I was Carolina, I'd do it. Steve, sorry, I stepped on you again. Did you have another follow-up?
No, go right ahead.
All right. Let's flip the ball. Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. And the defensive backcourt that Belichick has put together for this year has me on the edge of my seat. I can't wait to see what he's going to do with this crew. How do you think the defense is going to evolve? Do they have a pass rush that is going to be able to, I don't know, mitigate any holes that they have? Does Bill have the guys that are going to get to the quarterback and make the job easier for these DBs?
I think so. And Belichick has always been of the mind that you need to have both. There's always that debate, and you can always see it simmering in the summer, pass rush versus coverage, which matters more.
Mm-hmm.
But Belichick's always been adamant you need both. I mean, you could have the best pass rush in the world, but if guys are wide open in the secondary, quarterback's going to be able to find them. You can have the best coverage team in the world, but if quarterback's got all day to throw, plays break down. And so I think with the combination of players they have up front, obviously we saw Matthew Judon and what he meant to this team and what he meant to this defense in front of that pass rush last year. When you look at Barmore's ability to get some of that interior pressure, particularly the guy who remains one of my favorite players in the interior defensive line across the league, when you look at the potential of Wise, Uche, then the other guys that they have to come off the edge, I think there's an opportunity to get pressure with 4, and that's where it starts. You have to be able to do that, I think, in today's NFL. Get pressure with 4 so you're not relying on blitzes, particularly while I, like you, Murph, I'm excited about what we might see from this secondary, I do think you might see more zone. I think there's a move towards guys that are either because of their, where they are in their careers or
Why Butler's back.
Their zone coverage corners, their zone coverage players. You might see more quarters. You might see more 2 high.
Right.
You might see more, cover 3 single high, and so you have to have the ability to get pressure with 4. At the end of the day, look, Belichick does believe that cover 1 man free is God's coverage. Like that,
right.
That's what he believes in his heart. But when you look at the secondary players that they've assembled, they've got guys that are going to be asked to play zone. That's what it looks like here right now at the end of June. The player I'm most excited about, honestly, is Peppers.
Okay.
When they made that move, I thought, look, there's a guy that has been misused at times. I think Greg Williams had him aligned 65 yards.
Oh, God.
I mean,
yeah,
all 22 view, and you can't even see.
Yeah, you can't see him. Where is he? I thought you were playing with 10 players.
He's a guy that is asked when he's asked to be down in the box, open against the run, over tight ends. I think that's brilliant. And let's not forget, Bill Belichick views nothing more harmful to a defense than athletic tight ends. So you need guys that can cover them. And I think that's what they're going to ask Peppers to do. And so, to your question again, I think they have the guys up front that can mesh well with what we're expecting to see from this defense. So I have high hopes and expectations for this defense, but I do want to sort of see it before I fully buy in.
Now, this is your first show with us since the draft, I believe. And so you've got to understand that I have to get this name into a show every single week, a la Brandon Bolden. Hi, Brandon. And how do you feel about Jack Jones? Is he going to come in here and contribute in the way that I feel he can?
I think there's reasons to believe that he's going to be a big part of the secondary. I mean, when you look at the work that he did, when you look at sort of him from an evaluation process, I think the potential is there. I think when you look at the experience, a guy that played early, right? He started his career, played his 13 games, 4 interceptions as a sophomore. Then he gets things sort of sorted out. This is a guy that I think has potential to be a huge find for this secondary. I think when you sort of look at him and the way he moves, the way he changes directions, the way he can mirror as a man-covered corner, routes breaking inside, outside, the way he can change direction, which we know the Patriots value on both sides of the ball, but particularly at receiver and corner because that's the name of the game. And you look at his versatility.
Thank you.
I'm sitting here right now as we speak. I'm doing 3 different things. One is that Project on Win that I was talking about. The other is I'm working on, top 12 outside corners because we're starting our top 12 at every position for USA Today. And the reason why Jalen Ramsey is my top corner, my top outside corner in the NFL is because you can align him inside, you can align him outside, you can put him at safety, and he can cover. You might see him cover on a given week T. Higgins, then the next week TJ Hawkinson, then the next week Danny Amendola.
Right.
Like guys that can cover varied skill sets at the wide receiver position are so valuable. Jones can do that.
Yeah.
Jones, you can take him, put him on the boundary against the next receiver in 1 week, drop him inside to a slot the next week. You can do that on drive to drive.
Right.
This is a matchup-based game. Every time I go to the combine, every time I go to the Senior Bowl, every offensive coach, defensive coach, head coach, GM tells me to my face, this is a matchup-based league. You have to create good matchups on offense. You have to eliminate those on defense. If you can cover a tight end on first down, a slot receiver on second down, and an X on third, you need that. Jones can do that.
Yep. The only thing that worries me is how he absorbs the playbook, because from everything I'm told, he's a brilliant kid and he's not going to have a problem. But you know the way it is when you jump into the Encyclopedia Britannica, as to what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to be. That's the only question mark that I have. Go ahead, Claire. I'm sorry.
Mark, I think Murphy's going to burst with the fact that all your adoration of Jack Jones is just, I think we're going to have to cut Murph from another show just to kind of make up for all of that.
The look on your face when he was leading into that was priceless.
I was like, oh, here we go. Oh, it's that here. Here we go. Really?
No.
And I noticed that Mark keeps saying the words tight ends, and it's like, it's as if he's doing it just to try and make sure that I'm paying attention. He keeps
I do my research, friends. You know that.
So it's like,
zone
on. Because you said about your top 12 that you're doing, and this has got nothing to do with the Patriots, and this has got nothing to do with any notes I've made. But now I've got to ask you: you're doing a top 12 of tight ends. Who's your top 2 then?
For me, I haven't finalized it, but I think in my mind it's Kittle, then Kelsey, and then it really starts to get. I really am very high on Waller.
It gets murky.
Yeah.
Murky.
But that's sort of an issue. And the other thing that I'm struggling with is how high up do I put Kyle Pitts? Because
7.
What's that?
7.
7? See, I'm 5 to 7 is kind of the range where I'm struggling with Kyle Pitts, because I also like Dallas Goedert, very good tight end. There are some other guys as well, but again, it gets us back to that matchup and versatility, those two aspects to the NFL today, because, Pitts is one of those guys where you can put him at X, you can put him in the slot, you can move him around. Mike Gesicki is a similar one who I think is somewhat underrated. And I remember studying him coming out of Penn State, and people were like, he can't play in the NFL. And it's like, no, he can't pass block defensive ends one in the NFL, but if you're lighting him up with his hands in the dirt and asking him to block Khalil Mack 1-to-1, you're an idiot. Like, that's a you problem.
That's your problem.
And so I think, and Hunter Henry will be on that top sort of 11, 12.
Good. Else you won't be coming back to the show. I mean,
oh my God.
Completely. But
look, there are other guys like Dalton Schultz, who I think is a very good tight end. It's, but for me, a lot of people look at Travis Kelce and they say, oh, what he does as a receiver makes him the best in the league. And I think that he is a very good receiving threat at the tight end position, but I trust George Kittle as a blocker more. Guys that can sort of put their hand in the dirt. Like, I'm not asking George Kittle to do it 10 times a game, 12 times a game, because he's too good of a receiving threat. But you can, if you need to, line him up and ask him to block somebody one-on-one, and he can handle that. And so I think that puts him above Travis Kelce in my mind. Because
we're talking about brilliant tight ends, and the recently retired, inverted commas, everybody, for those who aren't watching, Rob Gronkowski. 2 things. Do you think he has retired now for good? Or do you see this guy coming back when apparently the rumors are when Brady does the phone call in November, he'll be back? And also, would you say he is the greatest of all time when it comes to tight ends?
I would. I would. I go that far with Gronkowski, and it gets us back to what we were just talking about, the completeness to his game, what he did as a blocker as well as a receiver, the dominance that he showed during that sort of 4-year stretch in New England, where it was like he was getting to everything. I mean, the AFC Championship game that they lost in Denver.
Oh God,
one of the best games I've ever seen. Right. I mean, he was catching everything. And the fact that Brady and Gronk got them back into a position where they almost tied that game at the end.
Yep.
It was just sheer force of will. more than anything else.
And
And look, there have been some tremendous tight ends. I mean, Tony Gonzalez, for example, Travis Kelce, certainly a very talented tight end, one of the top 5 in league history, perhaps. You can Ditka and what he did, Dallas Clark. Like, there have been some great tight ends that have
Russ
played
Francis.
in the NFL. Yeah. Gronk was a different being,
right?
Like just a different force of nature. I remember when they would do stuff like line up in a jumbo package and then just flex him out in the goal line, and you get a linebacker over him right on the end zone, right on the goal line. It's like whatever route he runs, he's going to win.
Right, he's going to win
on a split route. He's going to win on a fade. He's going to win on. You could just throw him a smoke screen. He's going to make that guy miss his face. He's just a different type of player. And so, excuse me, when you factor in what he did as a blocker, what he could do in the run game, and what he could do as a receiver, like, as good as Travis Kelce is, they're not running outside zone to his side too often. They're not running gap power. They're not running, tight end wham with him too often. They'll do it from time to time, but it's not a focal part of the game plan. It's certainly not in the scripted 15. They do that for Gronk, and so I think that sets him apart.
You said the perfect word, dominant. That's it. You just encapsulated it completely.
During his heyday in New England, there was nobody more dominant. I mean, he just took over games, not just as a pass catcher, but as a devastating blocker. And I'm glad Murph mentioned Russ Francis, because I go back to that era. I mean, Russ Francis and Dave Casper changed the way tight ends were used in the NFL. And I remember talking with Steve Nelson, who's a member of the team's Hall of Fame. And he said when Chuck Fairbanks was the coach, Francis was like a very easygoing, laid back kind of guy. When he would get mad and start throwing his helmet on the sideline, he said, myself, Grogan, Tippett would go over to, or not so much Tippett, but Grogan, Nelson, and Tony Collins was the running back.
Yeah.
And he'd say, just run the ball to Russ's side the rest of the game. And they're not going to stop us because Russ is ticked off.
Pissed. Yeah. He's pissed off.
He would just blow people off the ball. And that's the kind of blocker Gronk was. And you'd see him take on, legitimate NFL defensive ends. And that stuff doesn't happen.
No. But with Gronk, it was also the defense that he faced. There were rules to the NFL, and then there were rules as to how you were allowed to cover Rob Gronkowski. And it was going from here to here as to what you were allowed to do to Rob Gronkowski, and he still dominated. He still dominated on every single down. Fantastic point, Claire. Thank you so much for bringing it up. I wouldn't have thought that you would bring up so many tight end questions today, especially about Rob Gronkowski.
All right. I wanted to ask Mark real quick about the linebacker core. I mean, I know there's a lot of questions there. There's all these new moving parts. Actually, I am one that will be the first to admit they may struggle this year. We don't know. But I'm excited to see what these young guys can do. And I think it's high time that they've gone to these guys. They've invested, a lot of capital in it and in many of these guys. And I wanted to know what your feelings were on this as well, because I'm excited to see how they do.
Right.
Yeah. And I think in terms of units, it's the biggest question mark, right? Your defensive line, your secondary, and your second level of that defense. I do think it's the biggest question mark. And I think it is sort of a position group in transition. And I do think that there's reason to be excited because you have what have we been talking about for years about the second level of this defense? Getting young and athletic, right? Like I feel like for God, I mean, since before I was alive, I always feel like we've been talking about getting young and athletic on the Patriots second level, but might have an opportunity, like, with McGrone, with, back from injury, McMillan, like with the names that they have with Jennings, like, there's an opportunity to have that athleticism with the second level that I do think we would agree you need in today's NFL. Now, whether that gels certainly remains to be seen. If we get to November and it's basically the Mac Wilson and Jawan Bentley show, well, then maybe it didn't gel, and then we're hoping that they can patch it together. We might be seeing more of those, dime and dollar packages where you're basically using Peppers as a linebacker, where you're using Duggar as a linebacker. I mean, they might end up going that route, and maybe that's where they end up going anyway. But I think right now, here at the end of the June, linebacker is a question mark. I'm curious to see how they address it. There's an opportunity for younger guys to sort of step up and take on bigger roles, but maybe that doesn't gel and they patch it together with safety linebacker hybrid types like they've done in the past.
Excellent. Murph?
Yeah, just sticking on that same vein, and I'm really interested in seeing what Ronnie Perkins is doing. There's talk of him playing off the ball, and what he's going to bring. Talk about younger and faster. What do you think of Perkins in this year, and how is he going to fit into this rotation that Bill has going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about that. I remember, I forget the offensive lineman that came on the draft this year, but I was talking to him at the combine and talked about how his battles with Perkins made him a better player. And Perkins has a very diverse and well-rounded skill set as a pass rusher, but you use that athleticism in sort of more of an off-ball role. And this is what we're going to see in July, right? We're going to see if he can make that transition and combine his athleticism with that sort of pass rush and skill set and toolkit he has. Maybe he becomes your sort of Kyle Van Noy, where he's that off-ball guy that you're using as that blitzer, or you're using as somebody that when you use these sim pressure packages, you're dropping some guys off. He's coming off one edge and you've got Judon coming off of another. And so, this is the stuff that they're going to sort out in training camp. I think the potential is there for him to be a big-time contributor to this team, but we'll see.
That's fantastic. We got a question in the chat room that we'd love to bring up. Claire, could you do that from our good buddy Joel Shapiro?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I'd call it a question, but Rob will come back as I don't see him coming back to wrestling.
I mean, look,
more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, more of a comment than a question. But
to November and Brady picks up the phone. I mean, would I rule out Rob coming back? No, I wouldn't. I mean, if you get a chance to get one more ring and you only have to play a couple of weeks to do it, he might come back.
This isn't a wrestling show, though, folks. Tuned into the wrong ones. This is not a wrestling show.
After being so deep last year, Tampa's kind of thin at tight end this year.
They are.
I mean, unless you're a huge believer in Cade Otton, they're extremely thin.
I'm gonna jump in with both feet here. And Mark, what did you think of the draft pick drafting Zappe? I thought it was brilliant. I thought he's somebody that's going to be able to come in here and not push Mac. That's not what I'm saying, people. It's not what I'm saying. It's Mac Jones's job, but he's a guy that's going to come in here and contribute a lot in practice, in running the scout team and being able to do things of that nature. A lot of people got down on Bill for drafting another quarterback, but this is what Bill does. He drafts a quarterback, and he'll probably do it again next year.
During the Brady era, I think they drafted a quarterback basically every other year.
Yeah,
even when they had Tom Brady. It started when Brady was just younger, but it continued as Brady was putting up huge numbers and was an MVP type of guy, and they were winning Super Bowls. They were still drafting quarterbacks because it's a quarterback-driven league. And we saw, as Patriots fans, when you lose number one, you better have an answer at two. That Matt Castle year, they had an answer at two, and they almost got him into the playoffs, even though you lost Tom Brady. You have to have a solid backup option. Brian Hoyer, his job more than anything else is to be an extra set of coaching eyes and ears for Mac Jones. That's his role.
He's the most well-paid coach in New England.
That's 100% true.
One of the most experienced as well.
That's true. That's true, Claire. Bailey Zappe's job is to learn this offense, be a developmental backup quarterback for this team, and to give the scout team, to give the defense a good look every week in practice. He's an experienced, accurate passer who makes quick decisions, which is what you need from a scout team quarterback. He's had more reps throwing the football than I think most NFL quarterbacks have, regardless of the level of experience, because he threw it 7 million times. And then you look at what he did at Western Kentucky. He was one of those guys when I was putting together my quarterback, reports and stuff like that last draft cycle, that I hated to watch. Not because he was not a good quarterback, but because watching a game of his took 2.5 hours because he threw the 742 times. And it's I got to chart all this stuff. Are you kidding me? No, let me go watch some Big Ten quarterback that threw it 5 times a game. He's fearless. He will challenge any window. And I think that there are traits in his skill set that make him not just a good pick where they drafted him, but a nice long-term developmental option who could be a spot starter type in this league. It's so
Found struck.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. We all believe in Mac Jones.
Yep.
No questions asked. You have to sometimes hedge. What if Mac Jones doesn't take the step forward we're all expecting to see from him? What if he's not the guy? That's why you continue to draft quarterbacks, because this is a quarterback-driven league. And so I was, of all the picks that they made, that was the one that surprised me the absolute least. I was ready for a Bailey Zappi pick at some time in this draft. I was not surprised at all when it happened in the 4th round. I'm a fan of his game, and I'm a fan of the pick.
What are you looking for from Mac this year in his progression? What are the next 2 steps that he needs to take this season? And does it worry you who is calling the plays?
It absolutely terrifies me. And this is not a knock on Matt Patricia. It's not a knock on Joe Judge. What we have seen from this league with respect to handling young quarterbacks is the consistency around them is critical. You have to have consistency in scheme, consistency in play caller and offensive coordinator, consistency in talent around them. If you don't have that consistency, it is a problem. Ask Baker Mayfield,
right?
Ask Marcus Mariota. Ask guys that went 1st and 2nd overall how critical consistency is. Ask Daniel Jones. Then look at Josh Allen and say what you want about Josh Allen, his draft stock. And, I remember I've got good friends that said that he was the best tight end in that draft class. He was never quarterback. Same offensive play caller, same system,
right?
Same everything around him. And now he's one of the top players of the game in the position of the game. And you need that consistency. So yes, it concerns me. And hopefully they figure that out. But it's a concern for me right now. What do I want to see from Mac Jones this year? We talked about one area, the explosive plays. And I think that's going to come. I think last year there were moments when he had opportunities to challenge downfield early in the year, and he was hesitant to do that. And they tried to get him to do it midway through the season. He forced some throws, and it was a balancing act. I want to see consistent ability to generate explosive plays in the downfield passing game. That's one. The other, recognition pre-snap of pressure looks and getting ahead of that with his mind. That was one of the things that I thought he did extremely well at Alabama. There was all this discussion about, he's not athletic. And I remember telling people, look, once when he identifies pressure pre-snap, he can get ahead of it with his mind. He's going to be athletic enough when he has that head start. There were moments last year, even in the win against Atlanta, I did a 3-hour show breaking down every offensive play of that game.
It's a great show.
With Coach Bass.
Yeah.
And we talked about some of that stuff as well. Like, if he didn't know where the pressure was coming from, there was a problem. And there were some times where defenses were able to sort of confuse him pre-snap. That's the area forget the explosive plays. That's the stuff that sells papers and gets clicks. I want to see if he can scheme up responses to those pre-snap pressure looks and get ahead of that stuff with his mind. If he does that, he's going to be fine.
That's
Fantastic.
A really good point there. Yeah. One of the guys that I'm also excited to see this year, and I guess a lot of it will depend on the health of James White, and that's Pierre Strong, who I think they drafted him with the intention that he's your 3rd down back of the future. How much we'll see of him this year, I don't know, but it's been so many years since the Patriots had a running back with this kind of speed. And I am really interested to see how they use him this year. What were your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I was extremely excited about that selection. Wasn't surprised at all. Again, the matchup-based conversation that we've sort of been circling around this entire conversation. I think when you watch his game in college, you see the speed, you see the varied ways that he was used in college, and you can have an window into how the Patriots might employ him. I mean, figuring out Patriots running back room is sort of like the holy grail of football.
Yeah, fantasy football.
I mean, people ask me all the time, like, hey, who should I draft out of this backfield? I'm like, if I knew, everyone. Everyone,
and then just rotate week to week.
Draft everybody and rotate. But I think that out of the gate, he's probably the guy that is like the James White replacement look, right? I think that's the sort of James White hedge. But I think in an ideal world, you see him in the slot. You see him moved around. Like you might see some pony back. We talk about the 2-back packages all the time. Like
show ponies.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a defensive coordinator, do you see 38 in the backfield as well as Strawn? How do you defend them? Do you treat that as base? Do you treat that as 11? If you see 37 and Strawn in the backfield, how do you defend that? Because if you put a linebacker on Strawn and you get him isolated in a one-on-one situation or a weak side option route, good luck with that. So I'm curious to see how they implement them. I hope it's in that sort of manner where it's that sort of, slot / receiving threat out of the backfield. I think you'll see him a lot on outside zone and wide zone type of stuff to get to his speed and his vision. But I'm excited about that pick as well.
Great. Hey, Mark, sorry, I have to drop off, but I wanted to thank you for coming on. As always, you always do a great job. I love reading your stuff, and hopefully we can do this again soon. But
absolutely, my friend. Great to see you again, buddy.
All right, guys.
All right. We'll see you next week, Steve.
Okay.
I'll talk later.
All right.
All right. Sticking with that, Marky. Ramondre is coming into his own this year. How do you find Ramondre Stevenson fitting into this backfield? Do you see him getting more work out of the backfield and catching passes?
Absolutely. And I think that was sort of understated part of his evaluation was, what he offered as a receiver. Lincoln Riley's offense at Oklahoma had some designed plays for him, not just, screens and checkdowns, but some creative screens, some running back seam stuff. And he's a very nimble player for a guy of his size. My good buddy, Matt Waldman, Stevenson was one of his favorite players in that entire draft class because of his footwork, because of his change of direction skills. And I think, look, similar to quarterback where you need 2 guys, running back, you need 3-4 guys that can contribute. And I think Harris and Stevenson are the guys that are going to share the workload. I think that they're interchangeable in the sense that you can trust both in pass protection. You can trust both as receivers out of the backfield. You can trust both in outside zone, wide zone, gap, power, all that sorts of stuff. And I think they're going to share the workload. Stevenson has 1A. Harris is 1A. Stevenson is 1B. And then you've got your 2 sort of third down guys in White and Strawn. It's an exciting running back room. And I know that the focus over the past, say, 4 or 5 months has been the receiver room. Yeah, I understand that. But you look at tight end, hi Claire. You look at running back, there's talent around the quarterback position. It may not be like the best 11 personnel wide receiver room, but when you start thinking 12, 22, 21, there's talent around Mac Jones.
There really is. There's a lot of options on this offense, and I'm really tired of hearing about the fact that he does not have weapons. He does have weapons. They've added to it, and I think this kid is really gonna do something. Do you see a tick back, Bud, in the use that Damian Harris is going to get this year due to the fact that this is a contract season for him? We've seen Bill do it in the past. He's gone out and drafted some guys that are similar and can do similar things. Do you agree with that philosophy, with that? I don't want to call it a philosophy, but what's the word I'm looking for? A conspiracy theory.
I'm not one for conspiracy theories, Murph, but I do think that in part because of what we just talked about with Stevenson and their ability to rely on him more, you might see just sort of a natural reduction in the opportunities and carries and targets and everything for Harris because of the fact that, look, they drafted Stevenson perhaps with an eye towards Harris in his contract year. Now you've got an opportunity for a guy to be sort of a 1B to Harris's 1A. And so I think because of that, you might see sort of a natural reduction in his opportunities and carries and targets as opposed to the Belichickian conspiracy theory. But maybe the draft pick of Stevenson was the first step in that conspiracy theory. Who knows?
That's it. That's it. It just always seems to be the way. Somebody's coming up at the for a contract extension at the end of the following season, but Bill is already, plugged in somebody else that might get a red shirt or might see a little more time.
We've talked about this for years, guys. Like this organization's willingness to think ahead.
Right.
Not think for this season, but next season and the seasons beyond that. It's why you draft a running back when Why do you need a running back? It's why you draft a quarterback. Why do you need another quarterback? You have to be thinking 1, 2, 3 years down the road, because remember when they drafted Garoppolo, Belichick said it's always better to be a year ahead rather than a year behind.
Yeah.
And people interpret that with respect to the quarterback position. And that's probably what he meant at that moment in response to that one question. But I think that's a philosophy that they use roster wide.
Right.
Like, it's not just quarterback, it's interior offensive line. It's, if you're going to move on from Shaq Mason, you better add somebody. You better add depth. If you're going to move on from a receiver, you better add depth. And that's what they do from an entire roster construction standpoint.
Yeah,
it's been a hot topic. Sorry.
No, please. I was just nodding in agreement.
It's been a hot topic, inverted commas, and so it should be. The red jerseys are back, Mark. Are you happy? What are your feelings on this epic news that we've had recently?
I'm overjoyed. Look, I mean, these were the jerseys of my youth. These were the jerseys of my when I cut my teeth as a Patriots fan and as a football fan, like this is what I grew up with. And so I'm excited to have them back. And I'm excited, not just the jerseys, but the helmet. I mean, again, like,
that seems to be the thing is the
Pat Patriot helmet.
And the dividedness is the people are happy that's back.
I cut my teeth on the Broncos D, the Oilers, oil derrick on the helmet, like all those old sort of logos of the 80s.
Yep.
And the Pat Patriot was right up there with them. And so to see that back, I'm really excited about it. And also, look, let's be honest. I got to write a story about it in the dead of June when there's nothing else to talk about.
Right.
So, hey, it gave me a little bit of work to do too, which I was excited about.
Here's 300 words right there.
Yep. Boom,
are we going to see Mark in red then?
Unfortunately, look, I have grudgingly accepted the fact that at a man of my age, I can't be wearing jerseys anymore. It's why I sort of made the transition to fictional quarterback jerseys. With
there you go.
The Willie Beemans, the Reno Hightowers, Alex Moran, like Jonathan Moxon. I've got these fictional quarterback jerseys that I'm building a collection of. The Pat Patriot one, however, might be one to sort of bring that to a close and get one of those. Will it be a Mac Jones jersey or
get a Plunkett?
There you go.
Get a Plunkett.
That's the one.
That's the one.
True. It would probably be, honestly,
the same one we got out of the Sears catalog at Christmas when we were 6 years old.
That bad boy circuit, Mark.
Yep.
When that big 800-page
boom
catalog comes, you get excited for it. Yeah.
Go right to it. My next question is, David Andrews stepped up again. He came back here last year for less money than he was offered on the open market because he loves being a Patriot. Personally, I think he should be Pat the Patriot on the helmet. We just shave him and we'll make it Pat the Patriot. He stepped up again and restructured his contract so we could get the rest of these. I hate when I do that. So the Pats could get the rest of the draft class signed up. Where at the end of everything, where are you going to rank him as an all-time Patriot?
I mean, that's a fascinating question. I mean,
2 years ago, I had the Patriots drafting Ruiz out of Michigan to replace him because of his trouble with his lungs, and he's overcome that to come back here. I'm in awe of this man. I don't think there are many people that have worn this uniform that have been more important as a whole to this team during his time here. And so I just wanted to get your feelings on that.
And I think you saw that at the start of the COVID year.
Yeah.
When Cam scored that touchdown and handed the ball to Andrews. And this is a quarterback who had just come into the organization, but knew what this guy meant to this organization.
Brilliant.
And to come back from the lung issue the way he did, to handle sort of things from a business perspective to help this organization. I mean, it's entirely commendable. I mean, in terms of all-time Patriots, he's up there on the interior offensive line because of what he's meant to this team on and off the field. And in terms of getting a red Pat Patriot throwback jersey, maybe
there you go.
Might be the one to get more than anything.
Oh
else.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Being a former center, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I also believe that when you look at David Andrews, he is the offensive line coach. of
Yep.
this team. That you could name anybody you want out there, people, but he is the one that has come in here, has done his time under Dante Scarnecchia, and knows everything that Dante would teach to any other kid that's coming into it to be able to run on this line. I think he's an all-time Patriot. I think he's going to wear a red jacket. Unfortunately, centers, we don't get to wear gold
You don't
jackets.
get the gold one. No,
We don't
no.
get the gold
He'll
ones.
get a red one. He'll get a red
Yeah,
one.
but he'll get a red one. Claire, go ahead. I've rambled.
It's not yet, and obviously, and I know that you'll probably put out your 53 and things like that, but the cut's kind of coming soon. And who would you say is your sort of non-obvious snip? Who is that guy that you would cut? You, Mark Schofield, but perhaps most wouldn't.
That's a tough question. Man, Jonathan Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what he's done for this team. And I love the fact that, when we spend so much time talking about matchups, you look at Jonathan Jones, and there have been times when he's been the Tyreek Hill guy. When they would play the Chiefs, and it's like, hey, guess what? You're getting Tyreek Hill. You're getting the shifty slot, speedy type guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think the additions that they've made in the secondary, and two, this potential transition to more zone type coverage. That might mean that sort of skill set is not a necessary thing to have in the secondary as it has been in years past. Would it surprise me? It would still surprise me, but that's the kind of guy that I'm looking at from this roster. It's penciled in right now as a starter, but we all know Belichick has made some surprises, cuts, and that surprise veteran cut that we always write about right before training camp starts. He might be the guy.
I've got a general NFL one now, so this isn't Patriots, but I know that we're pushing it time-wise, so we want to wrap up. You have eyes all over the league, and I know it's now just the end of June, and we haven't had full training camp on this and the other, but looking at it as it is, as we record this in the end of June, what team do you think, what opponent do you think may be sneaky good and may be counted out by people, and who would you think sneakily sucks? And people would rock it down as they're going to be.
Oh my God, I adore you. I adore you so much. Go ahead.
What did I do?
Sucky.
Sneakily sucks is a fantastic way to sort of phrase things. Looking at their schedule right now, a team that I think is going to surprise, and I've said this on many different shows, Detroit. I have this weird soft spot for the Lions. Not just in what they've added, obviously Aiden Hutchinson, Jameson Williams, the other additions that they've made. The way they played for Dan Campbell last year.
Right.
I mean, this was a team that,
oh my God,
they lose to the Ravens on a fluke field goal. They lost a lot of games very close, but they battled. And I remember having this conversation with Doug Farrar over at USA Today that it's cliche, it's corny, and coaches
it's high school.
All the time, that team gave us everything that they had. But I firmly believe that every team that played the Lions last year, and even if they won, they walked away thinking, man, that team's going to be good. That team legitimately gave us everything they had. So I think the team that could really surprise, not that they make the playoffs or everything like that, but you're seeing 3-4 wins over under. I'm hearing the over there. I think they're going to be better than people expect. So the Lions are that team that I think is going to be sort of sneakily good. Mm-hmm. A team that's sort of, I don't know what to make of them. Arizona. And a lot of people, they look at Kyler Murray and they say he's one of the game's best quarterbacks, and I get it. They start every year great.
Yep.
Cliff then struggles to make adjustments. Teams figure out what they're doing. And you get into November and it's like, what do you have from this team? Yes, they made the playoffs last year, but laid an absolute egg on that Monday night wild card game. I know that, they're playing Arizona, and Arizona, a lot of people look at them and say, that's going to be a good football team. I'm not so sure about it. I
don't believe in Kingsbury, and I don't. He's the best second baseman in the NFL. I really do. That's the nicest thing that I can say about the kid. I've got a league-wide question for you, Marky, before we let you go. What did you think of the Colts off season? How do you think that team is going to embrace their new quarterback?
I remember walking into the combine media room as Ballard was walking out, and
Yep.
he's red-faced, he's flushed. It's like chaos, and I'm like, what in the world did I just miss? And everybody, to a person, man, woman, everybody I talked to was like, you missed Chris Ballard absolutely lay a blowtorch to Carson Wentz. He just obliterated that guy for an hour. And everybody's like, they'll be lucky to get a 7th round pick for Carson Wentz.
Mm-hmm.
They got 2 picks from Washington.
2 picks
a week later, which probably tells us more what the league thought about this quarterback class coming out. But I give Chris Ballard credit for realizing the mistake and just cutting bait and moving on and not flushing good money after bad with respect to Carson Wentz. Mm-hmm. And then you go out and get Matt Ryan. And I know it's June and everybody has their bouquets for every new face in the locker room, but it seems like it's a breath of fresh air in Indianapolis, the difference between Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan and what he's going to mean to that offense. And it's not that Wentz had a bad sort of season, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The problems were those 7 interceptions were glaring, boneheaded mistakes that cost them the playoffs. And when you combine that with everything else that went on in that locker room, when you have Jim Irsay basically saying, we got to move on from this guy, it's a problem. So I think that sort of addition plus an addition by subtraction situation is going to be huge for Indianapolis. And then you look at Jacksonville's a year away. Houston's 2 years away. I don't know what you're going to get
in
from
Tennessee.
The other teams in that division. Tennessee has some question marks too. They trade away AJ Brown. They draft Malik Willis. Why? Because Ryan Tannehill is entering that contract year. They could be a team that sort of struggles. I think Indianapolis had a very good offseason for a number of reasons, least of which is they moved on from Carson Wentz when everybody in the world thought that there's no way they'd be able to do that.
No, I think they're going to win this division going away. I don't like the moves that Tennessee made this year. I thought there were some serious mistakes. They looked a little too far down the road when they should have embraced the opportunity that they had in front of them. It doesn't always happen, people. Not everybody is the New England Patriots who are in it every single year for 20 years. And even folks in New England are learning that now. Marky, I want to thank you so much for being here. It's always a fantastic hour. It flies by like in 14 seconds. It really does. I look up at the clock and I say, holy shit, we're in overtime. Mark, thank you so much for being. Please tell everybody what you've got on the stove, where they can find you. When am I going to start seeing some afternoon podcasts that I can tune out, whatever's happening on my TV?
Right. There you go. Well, the SCO show will be returning right around training camp time. I mean,
Thank you.
Let's just face it.
I know.
Nobody needs to hear me yapping for 20 minutes about Pat Patriot. I mean, I'm touched enough that people want to hear this accent anyway. But if it's dead of June, I get it. So
I know it's not as nice as Claire's accent. People watch and listen to us just for Claire's accent.
No.
Yeah, they do.
I like listening to Mark.
We hear it. We listen to Mark, but we have it easier here because we always have somebody like Mark and you.
But you can find me on the Bird app at Mark Schofield. USA Today is such a wire. Like I said, we'll be rolling out our top 11-ish at positions after the 4th of July holiday. Like some positions we go 12, 13, 16 for quarterbacks or however many I feel like ranking. So you can look for that. But yeah, friends, always a blast coming back.
Really is, man. It's always so much fun when you come in here. And I coming from you, I really believe that. A lot of people say that, but coming from you, I really believe that you always seem to enjoy yourself when you're here. Thank you again for coming here. While you're back home, when you come back home, please stop and find yourself a nice roast beef sandwich, and I will come up and I will pick up the bill for the entire family.
Quick story.
Okay,
so we've been planning this trip for a while. And I had one request because we're going up, my family, my mom and dad who live down in this area, they're going up as well because my brother, not saying they're 2 kids. We haven't seen them. It was pre-COVID, Jack and Summer, my nephew and niece. Summer was born the last time I saw her. Now she's 4 and she's running around.
Wow.
I had one request. Kowloon. That was my only
request.
Look, I have not been back. I have not eaten at Kowloon for like a decade and a half. I don't even remember if it's good at this point, but I have to get to Kowloon. So we're doing Kowloon one night. Probably I do have a soft spot for Arby's, but If I'm up in that area, I'm getting to Kelly's for at least
Okay.
one roast beef
Okay.
sandwich. And we're going to do that as well.
There
So
you go.
Murph, you're not going to see a picture from me this weekend at an Arby's in Revere just down
Thank
the
you.
street from Kelly's. I couldn't do that to you. I couldn't do that to you.
Please, if folks you don't know that out there, Mark has a large affinity for Arby's. He loves Arby's. I do not eat at Arby's because we have other choices here that are
We don't have Kelly's down here.
right.
In the
They don't have
okay?
Kelly's, but it's a nice little ribbing thing that Mark and I do to each other on the Bird app, as he calls it. And I honestly, but if you're up there and you're pulling in, you got a couple hours before you go, give me a call and I'll run up and we'll sit down and have.
If things line up,
yeah,
lunch at Eli's could be on the docket.
Ooh, that's cool.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I might have finally got my mug.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant, man. I would definitely love that. I would definitely love it. It's changed a tad bit, but the mugs are still hanging there. We will, if you stroll through Middletown at any point in time, and let me know, and we will go and have a beer. We'll get some nachos for the kids, and we'll have a good time. Maybe if we even get lucky, Butchie will be pitching in a game that night, and you can come down to Palmer Field and check that out.
Maybe he could teach Owen how to pitch because I'm struggling with that right now.
He could. You believe me, he would love to. There is nobody. We work with the local Little League, and the kids flock to him like it's unreal, as to him teaching them how to pitch a baseball, because all the coaches know how to do is teach them how to throw a baseball. Right. And Devin is just a really good teacher, and he gets along really great with the kids. I'll send him down there for a couple of weeks, and as long as if you can feed him, then you got him. All right. Claire, take us out.
Well, that is a wrap, folks. We'd like to thank the great Mark Schofield for his time and his insight. We have been Steve, previously, Murph and Claire. This has been One Patriots Place Live, brought to you by e2gsports.com. So tune in next time and go Pats.